Just going back to color swatching, but before that I just want to recap a little bit on the papers and the different kinds of papers to make sure that you understand the difference between the papers. So the paper that we're working on mostly is the knot or cold pressed. It's also called cold pressed paper. That is the one that we work the most on. And then you get hot pressed, that is very smooth. So you can see that it was almost like ironed flat and it's got no texture. The knot has a little bit of texture and the rough has the most texture. Then about the brushes that I'm going to use today, these are the brushes that I'm going to use. I bought a new brush yesterday. It's a very nice brush, it looks like. It's an entry-level watercolor brush of Daler Rowney, a System 3. And as soon as it says graduate, then you know it's going to be an entry-level brush. And this one is my Raphael Kalinsky. This is a better brush, and I think it's imitation sable. Then I also just want to show you this one. You can see it is a synthetic brush and also a cheap brush, but this is what happens if you leave it into water too much, too long. Then the varnish of the thing will come off. Okay, then I've got these little cutouts that pre-cutouts that I use. Like this is just mounting board in sizes, and I use this in my sketchbooks, and it really works very well, so that I don't have to draw loads and loads of little blocks by hand or measuring. So these are pre-measured and it works very well. And it's just cut off mounting board. And the other thing that works well is the lids of ice cream holders. These ones I made into little color checking bits for people that want to check a color to mix the right color, because it's nice and white. Then you've got something to measure it against, or compare it to. So what I did for today's exercise is actually just to have a row of blocks of these different ones, because I'm actually just going to practice my consistency in the watercolor, and then also a gradation where I go from dark to light or from light to dark. You have to be able to go both ways. So these are all very good exercises to do to practice your skills in watercolor. I'm just going to get my things ready and then I'll continue. For today I'm going to work in my watercolor palette that is plastic. It actually works very well. And here I've got a combination of the tube paints in and some of the pre-bought little blocks that you can put into your metal palettes as well. So I'm just going to use some of these to show you the exercises that I'm busy with. And the first thing I'm going to do, and because it's plastic, I can use my spritz bottle to just activate it and just make it a little bit more wet. Remember, I don't use this in the metal tins. I use a little dropper so that my tin won't rust in the long run. So this might be off camera because I want to show you the swatches. And then, let's start with the exercise. So over my years as a teacher, I've realized that people don't want to do the practice, but they want to actually start a picture and then think it's going to be a masterpiece without actually practicing. But that simply won't work. You have to actually practice. Now, watercolor is all about controlling the water. Now, it seems counterintuitive because at the one end, you can't really control the water that much. but you can learn a lot about how to vary the consistency from very creamy, and I'm mixing on a palette here that was in that little box that I showed you just now. Now this is a very nice and juicy mix. It's not creamy yet. So creamy is even thicker, almost just like that. And I use that as a base to work from. But I find that when you just start out, it's actually very difficult to work from creamy. So this is a, let me just go and quiet my dog a little bit. I'm not starting over. I just decided I can't do 9 videos every time. I just want to do a little 3-minute video. So maybe these blocks are too big, but I'm going to give it a go. So all I want with this, and while it's wet, it's easy to do, is to fill this block. And I can see my blocks are quite big, but I've challenged myself a little bit. And also I don't want to pre-cut any others at the moment. So there I've got a nice little light block done with the very transparent one. You can see if you move it like that, it's quite transparent. Okay, this bit here is where I clean my brush. I've got some paper towel or towel underneath where I can dry my brush, and then I go into the clean water before I start again. Now I want to make it a little bit darker. The next wash I want to do a little bit darker because I'm practicing. I'm practicing the control, and I must say I'm very impressed with the brush. Okay, it's got a loose hair there, and you often find that with new brushes. Okay, so when you work in your sketchbooks, you can dedicate the whole sketchbook just to practice your swatches. Now that is maybe a bit darker, so I could try and just, while it's still wet, otherwise you will get cauliflowers and back runs if you go into it again with more water. And that more or less looks like a little bit darker than that, and it's also quite smooth. Now I just want to mention that while we work on the cheaper paper and not 100% cotton, the results will not be the same as on cotton paper. And I've just made peace with it. I've just decided that's the way it's going to be. I can't change it. And I don't want to spend a lot of money on actually practicing on cotton paper. Now, because then I think one will be so careful. So I'm just building my muscle memory, and I'm going to make it nice and juicy. Now you can see if I do that it's actually quite a nice and juicy darker color. Okay, so again I'm going to try, and you can see I'm not bothered about sticking into the little block. That is just a guideline where to actually place the post. So I'm not so bothered about making it very neat. Okay. If you look at my garden, you'll see I'm not bothered about the staying within the borders. Okay, that one also I like it. Clean my brush on the sponge on this, and then go back into that, and I can see that my brush is almost clear. Now for the next swatch I want to try something different. Okay, I just want to make a nice creamy mix. Okay, remember to work nicely with your brush, especially when it's still got a very nice point. Not to and I'm talking to myself here, because I can also be rough on brushes. Okay, first there because I want to get rid of most, and on my sponge, then into the water and make a nice clean thing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet the paper first, and it's difficult to see, so you have to look from the side whether it is shiny and also not too much, just wet, because I often overextend and make it too wet, so it's nice and wet. Then I'm going to take my creamy mix. I forgot something. Before I put it in there, I have to sort of get rid of the most water here, otherwise my creamy mix will not be creamy anymore. Okay, so this helps you to concentrate on what you are doing and taking note while you're practicing. And now I'm going to drop this in, and you can see the difference already by putting this into the wet, so that you can get confident with your wet into wet. I love this method, but I mean, I can see I still need to control it much more. Now I promise you, with a cotton, this smooths out so quickly. Okay, I can go back in with a more dry brush, and while it is wet, and then manipulate the paint a bit. Okay, and as I said, I'm learning with you. I'm not a watercolorist yet, but I'm practicing. Now the next little block, let's see, we've done a wet. I want to see, I want to do a darker version, and what I do afterwards is I write down what I've done if I remember. Now this is a nice dark one, and you can see I also changed the direction of where I paint. Now with a more creamy mix, you can see it actually lends it very well to a dry brush, and you can see the texture of the paper when you do this. And this is just a not, it's not hot, so it's cold pressed. Okay, I don't know exactly how they make the paper, but the indents come from the material that they press the paper on. And what I also don't know if both sides are the same, because yesterday I saw on some of the new papers that I bought that even with this rough, I think it was this one, and it's a cheap paper, really a cheap paper from Artboard. It says rough because I wanted to try it, but the one side is quite rough, but the other side is smooth. Okay, so I don't know whether both sides are actually going to work for watercolor, but I don't mind. I'm going to try and see how it works. I also bought this little one here, and I like to buy them in the same size so that I can actually bind them. This one is fine grain, cold pressed, heavyweight paper, but it's just 250 GSM, which, and you can see the fact that it says graduate also means it's student quality, so it's not cotton, and it's got a very distinctive pattern that I probably won't like because it's too regular. It's got too much of a regular pattern, and that normally annoys me, but we'll see. And I don't even go to the smooth. For the smooth paper, I actually just use the Fabriano mixed media paper because that is smooth enough for me. It's got a slight tooth, and that is smooth enough for me. Okay, so now I want to show you when you go back into, and I hope this works. Now these ones are touch dry. This one, you can see it actually moves when I touch it like that. So let's drop in some, while it's wet, drop in some color. I just want to check. I can't help myself. This is not part of the exercise, but who cares? And if I do something more wet, I just want to splatter even in this one. Just going to splatter in that one. I just want to protect this part here with some wet, because I think if you go back into this now with a different viscosity, or this one is more fluid, just more, you should have those cauliflowers. And I think that's what happens, that if you're not patient enough, or I mean obviously you can be very patient and you want those cauliflowers, but often when it's not dry enough and you go back into it, that's where the interesting things happen. And what I've read or listened to on YouTube is that if you go back and it's not as watery, so it's a thicker consistency. So say for instance, I'm going back with that, you'll see that it spreads less. Okay, so you can see you can't just start with a pretty picture or with a pretty painting from the start if you don't even know the basics of it. And people often say, but I don't know what to draw or what to paint. Please don't. If you don't know what to paint, it's a clear sign that you should practice. A very clear sign. All right. So I am going to do these off camera and then I'll show you, because I'm not even sure that I'm going to get them right. But I mean, that's already enough exercise for the day, isn't it? And you can do pages and pages of it. Please try out all your colors, because I think that's one of the things is you have to learn how your colors work. Because the other thing we're going to do, and I'm just mentioning it here, is to try and soften some of these edges so that you can see how some of the colors are able to do this. Now I'm coming here with a lot more water. So what's going to happen? Vilna, you asked about the cauliflowers. This is what happens. If you do this, you have backgrounds, and there we should have a cauliflower there. So if the paper is still wet, when it's dry, you can see it is difficult to dissolve that and to get rid of that. Some of the colors are different, so you'll find that some of the colors actually do dissolve quicker, so, and others stay in the paper, so you won't be able to get rid of that line quite easily. So yesterday I saw a video, and I thought, this is so so unique. So what she does is then she puts salt on both those areas, and then it sort of hides it in a way. But it was quite interesting. So now when this is totally dry, that's the next, some of the other exercises we can do. We're going to layer on top of this, and you'll see how it actually then still shows through the color underneath. And those are the things that we need to practice a lot. Okay, I hope you enjoy this video, and I've tried out my new brush. I am very pleased with the brush. It is a very nice brush. And this brush was $150, less 10% if you belong to an art society, at Brush and Canvas.